Chapter 9. I finally got a grip on myself and lifted the comb up to the light and perused it. What are they doing to me? I pulled out all the hair from the comb and let them slither into the drain and drown. Staring into space, I felt myself slide my hand down my hair and no longer had the urge to exercise the ability to think. I felt hopeless. Regaining the aforesaid ability, I went to the mirror and parted my hair from the middle, leaving behind what used to be a thin white line, which was now a fat one, ready to spread across the waning globe. I was sent with the promise I would get fixed. I was sure I had been lied to. Unable to look at myself any longer, I went back to the room and sat on the bed. My hair was one thing no one could deny was a remarkable feature I had. They all loved the healthy dark brown hair that cascaded down my shoulders during my intimate hours. It was one thing that allowed others to overlook my crooked teeth and my unhealthy complexion. It made me feel like the rest. We all had our flaws and strengths when it came to Maine, and this was my strength. This was what I was prettily proud of, and they took it away. The hollowness I felt made sure I did not feel. Perhaps that was what they were trying to do. To make me stop feeling might have been the key to my recovery. But if I felt in the first place, would I have done all that I am being punished for? I realized I often wallowed in self-pity with all the time I had in my hands. It was so much easier for me to believe I was in a horrible place with deranged people surrounding me and terrible people watching over me. But I could also thank God for giving me the strength to stay alive, to have made me white in lieu of black, to never wake me up with an empty stomach, to have the isolation I always yearned for. Now that I had gotten it, I hated it. My heart leapt to my throat. There was a shuffling of shoes outside the door, then it sounding like the person was walking away. I let go of the breath I was holding, only to suck it back in when I heard footsteps reapproaching. They came and went. The sound of the shoes had in store made it evident the person was wearing block heels, and the heavy steps which landed with a certain assiduousness confirmed it was a woman with the weight of a man. Curious as to what was going on, slowly I prodded to the door, making sure I did not make a sound. I touched the door by spreading both my hands on it and slid them down, feeling the coolness underneath the palm of my hands. I placed one foot forward and the other backward and bent my knees so that I was in a genuflecting position. My right eye was in level with the lock of the door, as it often was these days, accompanied by a false hope floating in my head that one day I could be able to see the reflection of sunlight I ached for. But it would be wrong of me not to enlighten you with another fact. I also peeked through the keyhole to see women being dragged out of their rooms as they shouted profanities to satisfy the sick part of me. I was staring at the door in front. I had not noticed the hysterical laughs coming from behind the door until now. I had been so absorbed in my own sorrows and confusions the notes had to offer. It was only the woman living in the room in front who acted this way. It was only her who shrieked and laughed like she was past gone. The others were ominous in their own ways. They also shouted terrible things, and by the slurred ways they spoke at times, it could have been while they were asleep. Some whispered in the dark when there was silence. Some would talk to themselves for hours, talking in two different voices, arguing over petty things. And when the loneliness started to seep to the pits of their souls, they would fight it by talking to the others who sat feet away. But it was always a topic which no sane person was allowed to discuss. At times it was things that did not make the least of sense. It was as if they were trying to convince me that their spirits exited their body after some time to haunt the place. It was only a matter of time before the voices in my head took inspiration from these sick people and joined them in their world of lunacy. The footsteps were fading away until they stopped and started getting louder once more, intimating me they were coming in my direction. The woman strode faster than before, for the sound went in lieu of like it had in the previous rounds. I had never seen nor heard a nurse pace back and forth in this corridor before, nor did I understand why someone would want to spend so much time with psychotics. When the woman reached to the front of my door, I just got a glance of her summer dress. She was not a nurse. Her face could not be seen, for she was too quick. I strained my eye, my hand covering the left, for I did not have the ability to voluntarily shut one eye, and waited for her to pass again. It was as if she was teasing me, for she stopped when the footsteps went down the corridor, to my disappointment. But then a sound came, indicating she had turned around, and once more she was too quick for me to see her face. All I had was one image of her brown dress, large body, and white hair. Was she another crazy one? She could not have gotten out loose, not here. It was impossible. We had nothing to let ourselves out with. There was no loophole in this story. After a few more rounds, she decided to satisfy my curiosity. She walked slowly. Very slowly. I could hear a non-existent clock ticking in my ears in lieu of her shoes as I waited for her to arrive. My heart plummeted to my stomach. She stopped right in front of my door. She faced towards the right. The atmosphere of the room changed now that I looked at the side of her face. That face. I did not need to see the rest. I hoped I did not see the rest. Slowly, 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 as if trying to give birth to dramatic events, she turned around. She wore an ugly grin, showing her yellow crooked teeth, her right incisor missing and the left pinching into her lower lip. Her lips were pink as they naturally were and stood against her fair complexion. Milk was the key, I supposed, for she never spent a day without gulping a glass of the white liquid I could never go near. I had to go through a veil of nausea to get to it, the veil wrapped around my body like a spider web as I waited for the spider to return. She knew I was looking at her. She smiled the same way she always did, the way my demons and nightmares did after she became their inspiration. I kept staring at her and she did the same. I wanted to close my eyes and tell myself this was not real, but I did not have the strength to do that. She seemed to have drained it out of me along with the blood I bore, for I felt cold and hollow like a tunnel left for the hideous side of nature to take into its tenacious arms that stretched and stretched as they winded in their serpentine ways to the ends of my world where they barricaded the passage so that I was the rat to my dolor. In a flash, her face was right in front of me. Her quick movement was sure to send my soul to another world. I shrieked and fell back. "Come on, Joanne, is that any way to greet me?" she said from behind the door. I remained silent as I always did, but this time it was because I was scared for my life. Dying did not seem a beauty anymore now that I was so close to it. She could not have been here. She was supposed to be miles away. Yet, here she was. "Come on, dear," she said in a sickly sweet voice. "Tell me, why did you kill poor Leona?" No, this was not happening," I kept telling myself. A voice added, "You can't run away this time." I placed my hands on my ears to make the voice of the woman muffle, but I could not stop the voices in my head from echoing in the tunnels. No, I kept muttering, then I started speaking aloud until I realized I started shouting the words. She was trying to say something over my voice, but with all the screams and laughs from the other side, my hands on my ears and my own voice, I could not understand what she said, but just heard the sound of her distinct, muffled voice. Two other voices introduced themselves to the scene and made hers disappear, and it had taken some time to realize that. I slowly edged to the door and looked through the keyhole once more, with my heart still beating fast. There were two nurses outside trying to silence all the patients who were now out of their wits. I sat on the floor with my legs propped up in front of me and leaned back on my hands, my arms supporting my weight, and crawled backwards before my back hit the wall. I pulled my legs to my chest and encircled my arms around them, pushed my eyes to my knees, and felt the heaviness beginning to throttle me. My facial muscles twisted and contracted in strange ways, and a strain welcomed my eyes before I began to sob. They saved my life from Elise's filthy hands. End of chapter 9.